told that if you see a client outside of session, the right thing to do is to duck down the grocery aisle, avoid eye contact, and vanish. That's what I was taught. Please tell me I'm not alone in the comments. Is this you too? All you got to say is yes. We see this across our careers, right? It starts in grad school, it continues in our practicums and internships, etc. We're told to act like ghosts if we ever run into a client. The message was, if you acknowledge them, if you engage with them, you are crossing a boundary. But last weekend, sweaty from hot yoga and literally caught in the rain, I had a very different kind of experience, and I want to tell you all about it. It was me and my sister-in-law. We're walking to brunch, totally drenched, hair plastered down, no umbrella, in one of those beautiful moments where sunlight was shining through the raindrops. And I suddenly heard my name called out. I look up, right, expecting I don't know who, and it was the parents of a client that I had treated almost 10 years ago. In that moment, my survival brain was like, oh shit. And I remembered all the training, right? For a split second, my brain and body was like, look away, pretend you don't exist, pretend you don't see them. But I have a lot more privilege now that I've been doing this work for almost 15 years. So I quickly smiled and reached back to embrace this mom as her arms were outstretched. Why did I do that? Because this was a human encounter. We smiled, we hugged. I even told her, heads up, I'm sweaty and gross. I just got out of yoga before fully committing to the hug. And this mom didn't care at all. She was so excited to share how her kid was doing, about how she's now thriving as a 19-year-old and living abroad and doing amazing things. It was such a beautiful moment. I got a glimpse into a client's life years later, something we rarely get to see, right? And what struck me most was how different this felt from what I was taught all those years ago and from what we still tell each other in therapist spaces. This moment was not a boundary violation. This was a reminder of why human first boundaries matter. Oh, and by the way, if you don't know me, I'm Jenny Hughes. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and founder of the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective. And I support trauma therapists just like you because you deserve spaces where you can be human, get support, and feel less alone in this work. And today I'm talking all about therapist boundaries, not as rigid rules, but as living human practices that actually support you and your clients. Now, let's be honest, boundaries in therapy can feel super messy. Throughout your career, you find yourself asking over and over again, was it okay to answer that question? Oh shit, did I just cross the line? Am I being too rigid? What if my supervisor or my colleagues would disapprove? Am I going to get in trouble? Now, these are all valid questions and often real concerns as we work to do this work and protect our licenses. We got to be honest and real here. But we've all internalized these fears because of the way that boundaries are often taught is so black and white. But when you're sitting in session or standing in the rain with a former client's parents, you realize that life and human first work doesn't fit neatly into those boxes. And don't get me wrong, boundaries are so necessary, but they don't have to strip away your humanity. In fact, the more human you are, the more clear and steady your boundaries can become. And I like to think of boundaries in three main categories. Now, of course, this is not exhaustive. So, again, hop in the comments. Tell me, what other categories of boundaries matter to you? Okay. For this video, though, the first category is content boundaries. These are the things about what you will and won't engage with or discuss in session. And they are totally up to you. It's the content that you are consenting to share. And a lot of times that content is informed by our values, our ethics, and the laws that we follow, of course, as trauma therapists. An example of this might be when a client is endorsing something harmful or oppressive or violent beliefs. You don't have to collude with that, especially if it's not aligned for you, but you never have to collude with that. That's a content boundary. Okay. So, what does it actually sound like to set a boundary in a tough situation like that? You could say something like, I hear that this is really important to you. And I also need to be clear that I can't support violence against others. Or I want to be clear that I can't align with that perspective, but tell me what about this feels important for you. Or a third option, my advisor, mentor, clinical supervisor in grad school um, had such a simple way of responding. So let's just say that a client is saying something negative or oppressive about women, and the client says back to me, yeah, you know, right? I can very easily say, no, I don't know. And that in and of itself is a powerful intervention. No, I don't know. We don't even have to go any further. We can then pause, notice, see what comes up for the client, and then continue to hold that frame and that boundary right from there. And I share this because I want to acknowledge and validate that these are tough moments, especially with hot button topics with our clients. And you might feel the pressure to stay neutral, but remember from last week's video, it's linked up here. Neutrality is still a stance. And setting a content boundary is where you get to take a stance in a way that doesn't make the session about you, but still communicates that the client has gone into territory that is not okay for you. Okay, the second category of boundaries here are disclosure boundaries. These are what you share about you and what you don't. Content boundaries are those things that are aligned or not, okay, in terms of your values, your ethics. These are disclosure boundaries are about self-disclosure. Now, in that rainy moment, I told that mom, watch out, I'm sweaty from yoga. That's a tiny human disclosure right there. And it fit. It was safe, light, it was real. But disclosures can be a lot bigger too. So maybe you've shared with someone, yeah, I've worked with other clients who really struggle with panic attacks. Or maybe you've said something about being a parent or not being a parent if it helps the client feel less alone. The key here for all of them, but especially for self disclosure, is discernment, right? Discerning and asking ourselves, does sharing this information serve the client? And does it feel safe and aligned for you to share the information? Then, does it strengthen the connection without blurring roles? Here, let me just kind of say this. Disclosure itself is a boundary, right? It's not always yes or always no. It's a thoughtful choice each time. And I know that self disclosure is a big topic. So we're going to go deeper into it in my next video next week because it truly deserves its own full conversation. Coming back to our boundaries, though, our third category of boundaries that we're going to talk about here, I like to call life as human boundaries. These are the ones that show up outside the office when you're living your messy, beautiful life. Just like me, sweaty at brunch in the rain. Or maybe it's seeing a client in the grocery store checkout line, or at church, or at your child's school. Or here's another one that I experienced in full costume on Halloween night while your children are trick or treating. The old training told us hide, don't acknowledge, pretend you don't exist outside of session. But the human first model says if it's initiated, if it feels safe, if it's authentic, you can respond as a person. That Halloween night, that client came up to me, also in full costume, and we embraced. We got to see each other's kids in real life because I work fully virtually. And it was another beautiful moment of human first boundaries. For you, these moments might mean a smile and a wave, or perhaps you also want to give a quick hug and a meaningful update. We let the client lead in these, right? And I want you to remember these moments of life as a human boundaries don't diminish your professionalism. They remind everyone involved that you're both human. And they often leave clients feeling even more connected and even more supported, not less. For me, that rainy day encounter wasn't about crossing a line. It was about being present in a beautiful, very human moment. And it wasn't just meaningful for me or for the parents. My sister in law was there too, remember? And she later at brunch told me how much it impacted her to see that human interaction. That's a really beautiful ripple effect of boundaries that honor both clarity and humanity. So here's what I want you to reflect on. Think about what's one boundary that's felt confusing for you lately. Did it make you feel guilty? Or did it surprise you by deepening the connection with your client? If you feel ready, let us know again in the comments so that we can show up for this together. And let me tell you, when I shared this brunch story inside of Brave, our members responded by sharing their own boundary moments. One therapist talked about her sadness around an unplanned and upcoming but very meaningful termination, the boundary of ending, and the grief that comes along with it. Another shared her joy of practicing brain spotting for the first time with a therapist, with a client who's also a therapist, and telling that client what it was like, the awe of being able to witness healing in real time with them. And also then holding her boundary in her role as she marveled at this process. These conversations don't really fit neatly into rigid training manuals, but they are the conversations that sustain us. And that's what we do in Brave. We hold the mess and the beauty of this work together so you don't have to carry it alone. So if you need a space like that, I'd love for you to join us. You can learn all about us at our website linked below and reach out to me. I'm here to help.